welcome to this special Viewpoint World Cup preview. Now, if you're interested in the World Cup, you're probably only going to watch the first half hour of this, after which you're likely to turn over to the World Cup itself. So you can catch the rest of this program online on gbc.gi. Let's introduce our guests and start going through the groups. We've got a lot to get through. To my far right, we have Stephen Gonzalez. He's the GFA Media Relations.
Good evening.
Paul Grant, a sports commentator for GBC.
Good evening.
Kenneth Askus, a football agent, who's been on our Viewpoint panels, especially when we're talking about football. And Dennis Baso, the CEO of the GFA. Welcome, gentlemen. Thank you very much for joining us. Let's dive straight in to Group A, which includes Brazil, Croatia, Mexico, and Cameroon. Let's assume that everyone thinks that Brazil is going to get through, but let's talk about their chances further on in the competition. Well, how far do you think they'll go?
I think Brazil are the team to beat, really. I mean, they're the host nation. There is a massive fervour going around Brazil. I know that there's been a lot of negative press, but if anything, that makes them more likely to win. I think they've got to win. I think the mentality is they have to win. Scolari, their coach, has won the World Cup before. He's an experienced campaigner. He's done well with Portugal as well. So, for me, anyway, I know it's early on in the programme, but for me, I think Brazil are the team to beat. I'm not sure how the other guys feel.
Do you think there's additional pressure on them because of the fact that they're hosting it and so much expectation is ladled on them at this stage?
Yes, but unlike other countries, when the Brazilians, they strive on pressure. You see them going out to the pitch, they're always happy and jovial, and like Paul said, they have a very experienced coach in Scolari who will make sure. He's a very passionate manager. Simeone from Atletico Madrid reminds me a lot. He never sits down. He's within his technical area, making sure that his players don't lower the guard. So yes, I agree with Paul. Even though we just started the program, they are the team to beat. But I'm pretty sure they can handle the pressure. They are more experienced than anyone about the weather conditions.
Last year at the dress rehearsal for the World Cup, the Confederations Cup, they beat Spain quite convincingly in the final as well.
Yeah, I think they had an excellent Confederations Cup, and I think that will serve them well going into the World Cup. I think it's very important to note that no European team has ever won a competition, a World Cup tournament, on South American soil. And I think that will continue in this tournament. Of the European teams, I think Germany will probably go far, but beyond that, I think that Brazil are in a very good position, or an excellent position, in fact, and I would agree with Paul and Kenneth that they are, in fact, the team to beat.
They don't have a lot of competition in that group either, because you know we've got Mexico, who have struggled to get out of the qualifiers, haven't they? And Cameroon and Croatia. And Cameroon, of course, they nearly didn't even get on the plane to the World Cup.
Well, yeah, they didn't, and they had that whole issue with their bonuses, which they managed to sort out and get on the plane. But and Croatia aren't the Croatia that they were. You take out Modric and Rakitic, maybe, and Mandzukic, you're struggling to name the household names that Croatia used to have in the past. I mean, the one thing I would say is
Croatia also struggled. They got in via a playoff as well.
But going back to the Brazil question, the one thing that they might find, and Kenneth touched on it before, in the latter stage of the tournament is coping with the pressure. I mean, it's not a Brazil team that we've been used to seeing in the past, where the pin-up boys, you could name them again off the back of your hand. If you take Neymar out of their attack, their main poster boys, if you like, are David Luiz and Thiago Silva, and maybe Dani Alves, and they're defenders, which you wouldn't really associate with Brazil teams in the past.
Well, at least you know that they'll have a solid defence, which is not always something that you can say about Brazil.
No, but that's typical. That's typical of Scolari. Scolari likes his team to be workhorses. He's left out the flair, for example, of Lucas Moura from Paris Saint-Germain. I think a key player for them will be Paulinho from Spurs. He likes to press in all areas of the pitch. So I think that will work in the favour in a way, not having like Stephen said all the pin-ups and flamboyancy. I mean, I still remember the World Cup of one of the first World Cups that I enjoyed in '82 in Spain, when they had the likes of Zico, Socrates, Eder. I mean, that team going forward was like a show on earth until they met their match in.
Yes, it's not an all-star team this time round.
If anything, they're weaker up front, I mean, Joe and Fred and Hulk have been okay this campaign, but they've not been electric. Neymar might play slightly in deeper, but you look across the midfield, as Kenneth mentioned, Paulinho, Fernandinho, who's had a great campaign for Manchester City, Willian, Oscar, great players across the midfield and the defence. So that really is their strength in the engine room of the field.
So who else do we think will qualify from that group? Because it's, I mean, it could be any of those three, could it?
I'm going for the Croatians personally. Even though Mexico, even though they struggle, the standard of the league is quite high. And they've got a couple of players in Europe who... They don't have many players in Europe playing. They've got Guardado playing in Germany. They've got Dos Santos playing in Villarreal, who's had a very good season.
And Chicharito not playing in England.
Well, that's the problem. They have. He's an excellent marksman, but perhaps...
He doesn't have the game time.
Well, he doesn't have the game factor, but it could work in his favour because he'll arrive quite fresh. And I'm sure the national coach will have the confidence in him.
The national coach went for the playoff games. He actually went with all the Mexico-based players. He actually left out all the foreign players.
It's a very strong league. The standard there is quite high.
The one thing that would worry me from Mexico's point of view is he's come out saying in the last couple of days that Rafa Marquez is still a key part of the team. And we all remember how long ago Rafa Marquez was at Barcelona. So...
Yeah.
Well, they've got going for them is that they won the Olympic gold in 2012, and perhaps a few of those players will carry over into this campaign. But I don't see Mexico...
They've been through 4 managers as well in like 40 days.
I think there was a figure I found on the internet. They've been through about 40-odd players in their qualifying campaign, so they don't have stability, and I wouldn't back them at all to get through that group. Even less so Cameroon, really. I think if you're hinging your hopes on an ageing Samuel Eto'o, who scored a few goals for Chelsea but was poor. Well, exactly. if he's your main talisman, then I think you're struggling.
Let's move on to Group B, where the first match will be a bit of a grudge match as well. It's a replay of the 2010 World Cup.
Yeah, it is. But if you go through the Dutch squad, if you take the attacking trio out of Van Persie, Robben, and Sneijder, you can maybe start to understand why Van Gaal has already signed a contract at Man United. Because their players, again, are
on the wrong side of 30.
On the wrong side of 30, and not the type of Dutch household names that you would have seen even going back to the previous World Cup final. I mean, De Jong is still there, but apart from that, really.
And as for Spain, anyone who picks Spain on their World Cup sweepstake is going to be whooping for joy, but they're really at 80% of what they were at the last World Cup, aren't they?
I just think the standard was so high in the last 3 competitions that they're playing for history here, and you could say that the likes of Xavi and Iniesta are kind of reaching the well, maybe not the twilight of their career, but they're maybe exactly. But they are still world-class performers. I mean, the depth they have. I mean, you're looking at players. I mean, maybe I'm biased because he used to play for Everton, but Mikel Arteta. For a guy of that calibre to get nowhere near the Spanish team, not even mentioned, or Juan Mata, exactly,
who probably won't see a lot of starting lineups.
Exactly, would show you that they have a very, very strong team. I mean, you look at the likes of Alonso, Busquets, Xavi, Fabregas, Cazorla, who is a class act for Arsenal.
They're quite strong in the goalkeeping department as well. They've got 3 goalkeepers.
Spain, historically as a nation, they always had very, very good goalkeepers. You go back 20 years and...
They've got 3 keepers in their squad which could walk into any national team.
I think crucially
the
with Spain
would walk to the other 4 who are there, likes of Diego Lopez, Adriano at West Ham. They're blessed with talent.
What they do lack though is in the striking department.
But I think we need to remember that Spain very often play without a recognised striker. So even though perhaps the strikers that they are taking to the World Cup, and I am surprised that Fernando Torres is included. I don't think he's had a particularly good season with Chelsea, but even taking that aside, even if they play without strikers, they're still a force to be reckoned with, and they showed that at the European Championships 2 years ago. So I don't think the fact that they don't have perhaps a standout striker of the calibre and level that we've perhaps seen in the past, I don't think that will affect their performances.
I think they recognise it because they've tried so hard to get Diego Costa in and fit every time he's been available for selection, but like Dennis says, Spain have very often played without on what they call a false number 9, and it'll be interesting to see if Diego Costa doesn't start. They might probably end up using Fabregas up there, like they have done in quite a few important big games in the past.
Yeah, I think to their credit, they do have a very viable plan A and plan B. You can go with a false 9, or you can play Costa. You can mix things up, and they have so many options available for any kind of situation, first or second half, that, you know, for me, it's very difficult to look beyond that.
Passing the ball around in the opponent's 6-yard box just for fun.
Exactly. Yeah, they can do what they want. So I would discount Spain at my peril, really. I think they're very strong.
I think they'll clearly get through the group. I think it's comparatively speaking.
But Netherlands
an
not
easy
so
group
clearly, though.
I still think they'll have too much for the Netherlands. I think they're the standout.
But what I mean is that the Netherlands, I think, may struggle to get out of the group.
Oh, I agree.
With the likes of Chile biting at their heels.
Chile are a very. We haven't discussed Chile, but they are a very good team. They're very well organised. They have a central midfielder, Arturo Vidal, that is a top player, and other players as well. And I think that Chile may well sneak in.
And the underdogs, the Socceroos, who can give anyone a game on their good day.
Yeah.
The problem Spain has is that normally in major tournaments they are slow starters. They kick off against the Netherlands, who haven't exactly had the best preparations, with some discipline problems with a few of the players. I don't think that Dutch has been said by everybody. They're a young team, but Van Gaal is a very passionate coach, and he'll be wanting to leave on a semi-high. And I mean, if he fails to get the Netherlands past the group stage, I don't think he can go back to the Netherlands for even to collect his and organise his removal back to Manchester. But it's tough because the problem Spain have, if they don't win the group, they face a possibility of a next round game against Brazil. So I'm not discounting Spain because of everything that's been said.
Mouth-watering prospect there.
But I don't see them being able to get as far as all the bookies and everybody expect them to be, especially Chile. Chile, they showed it in Wembley in November, where they played England off the park. And even though
that's not really much of an achievement.
No, but even though a few of my friends, they say, oh, it's just a friendly, that's typical English excuse.
Yeah,
when they get played on the park, it's a friendly. Nowadays, there's no friendlies. Like Danny said, Vidal for me is one of, if he was operated at the end of May after a long season with Juventus. They pushed him through the semi-finals in the Europa League to try and get him, but they failed, and he's had an injury. If that guy is on top form, both Spain and the Netherlands they're gonna take up points.
They also have Alexis Sanchez as well.
Yep.
Yeah, but Vidal is the stand-up player there. He's the, I mean, no wonder all the big teams he's already playing in a big team, but
everyone's after him.
Everybody is after him, and whoever wants him is going to have to pay top dollar.
Moving on to arguably the weakest group in the tournament. We've got Group C: Colombia, Greece, Cote d'Ivoire, and Japan. Could be any of those teams, really. Moving on to the next round.
Well, Colombia haven't got Falcao, so that's a massive loss for them. So if you go down the names that you just mentioned, I suppose, if
Greece in 20 years, I think, have only won one World Cup game, and that was against Nigeria at the last World Cup.
Yep, and they peaked at Euro 2004, as everybody knows. But going back, I mean, if the Ivory Coast decide to play well and decide to perform as a team, I think they'll get out of there pretty easily. But you never know with African teams which one is going to turn up, and what mentality they have going into the tournament.
It's a random factor, isn't it? So you got the African teams across the World Cup, and usually one of them performs really well, but you never know which one is going to do that.
I think the Ivory Coast have been very unlucky. They've been in the group of death in the last 2 World Cups. They've had some very strong opposition to kind of overcome, and to their credit, they've finished 3rd on each occasion, so they haven't been the whipping boys of their group either. And Yaya Touré for me was in inspired form for Manchester City, and looking at their squad, they've got some decent players in there. I mean, Drogba, again, tail end of his career, but still a potent force. Solomon Kalou, somebody like Wilfred Boney, who is wanted by the likes of Arsenal. And
he's had a good season.
He's had a very good season for Swansea. And other guys who could step into the breach. People like Cheick Tiote at Newcastle, who are guys who are highly thought of.
I think
so. For me, the Ivory Coast are qualifiers from there.
I think the Ivory Coast is the best hope that the African Confederation has of getting at this World Cup. Yeah, they've got more strength in depth. typical African nation, they're not very strong at the back and keeper. That's where the African nations normally suffer. But with the names that Paul has already mentioned, I reckon they're going to get through. Colombia, even though they're missing Falcao, it could be the announcement on one of the top La Liga's performers this season, Baca from Seville. He can take over the mantle. They've got Jackson Martinez from Oporto, who's another top centre forward. So even though Falcao being one of the best nines in the world, I think they've got, in those two players, they've got enough quality to replace him.
What about Japan?
Japan is a very fit team, like the Koreans. The only problem they have, they've got a great engine room. Honda from Milan and Kagawa from United, even though he doesn't get game, they are two outstanding players. The team, they lack height. I mean, and I fear for them in set plays, corners, stuff like that. But apart from that, they're a very skillful side.
Yes, but it's up to them to keep the ball on the ground, isn't it?
Yeah, it's up to them. But unfortunately, in football, I mean, tactically, the Africans, naturally, they are very physical, they're very powerful. So what are they going to do? They're going to get the ball high up into the likes of, I mean, can you imagine 4 Japanese trying to mark Drogba? It's going to be like throwing an under-15 player into a match. But in that group, I'm going for Colombia and the Ivory Coast to get through.
I'd agree with Kenneth on that. It's Colombia and the Ivory Coast for me. And I agree with this point. Radamel Falcao is a big loss to Colombia, but they do have Jackson Martinez at Oporto. They've also got a very exciting midfielder in James Rodriguez, who's with Monaco. And these players can, in my opinion, more than make up for Falcao's loss.
A stronger Colombian team, I would say, than I think we've ever seen before at the World Cup. Even without Falcao.
With the added advantage that they are playing in South America, which, I mean, I said it at the top of the programme, and I think it will tell as the tournament progresses. We will see South American teams coming into their own because they are familiar with the conditions, climatic conditions, environmental conditions. And I think that will tell.
The crowds as well.
The crowds
will be there, won't they?
The nature of the crowds, the behaviour of the crowds, the sort of the culture, the football culture.
The fact that they're all close by, so they'll have better access.
Except when the Argentinians are on. I don't think they'll get the South American.
And of the other teams in a comparatively weak group, I do agree that the Ivory Coast for me is the next best option. And if Yaya Touré comes into his own after a brilliant season with Man City, then who knows, they might get far. I certainly agree with Kenneth that they are the best representatives, as it were, for the African Confederation in this tournament.
Group D, it's arguably one of the groups of death. Uruguay, Costa Rica, England and Italy. That's if you consider,
yeah, it is. You've got 3 previous World Cup winners, even though it was a long time ago, but England, Uruguay and Italy, they've all won the tournament. England, the eternal
That's the big
failures.
Underachievers.
Look, the good thing I like from Hodgson, he doesn't carry the wag circus like the likes of Eriksson used to. He's not allowed the media circus in. He's given an opportunity to a lot of youngsters.
He's your quintessential, stereotypical English manager, isn't he?
Yeah.
He is, but whether your quintessential, stereotypical English manager is good enough to get someone out of a group like this and then get them further on in the tournament is debatable. Hodgson is a bit of a Jekyll and Hyde manager. You see what he did at Liverpool, but then he has his record in Europe, which goes totally against that. So I think for Roy Hodgson, this group, this World Cup might be the defining moment in his career as a manager and how he will be remembered.
For good or for bad?
For good or for bad, because everybody knows what the red top tabloids in the UK are like. In terms of England's chances, personally, I would love them to get out the group and go as far as they can.
I heard an interview that he gave to FIFA TV where he was asked what sort of tactics he was going to employ against the likes of Italy and Uruguay, and he said, well, you've got to split the pitch into 2. You've got to have your defence and your offence, and you have to do well in both areas. That was it. Okay, this is your tactical strategy. Seems a bit simplistic for.
But maybe that's what England needs. Someone to take down the whole circus that has been around England over the past 15, 20 years.
Let's play 4-4-2, let's do what we know best.
Break it down simplistically and play Rooney and Sterling up front, or Sturridge, and and build from there.
I think they need to be ambitious. I mean, I was lucky enough to be in Rustenburg for that USA game in 2010, and all the England fans were in agreement that England were playing football as if they were handling a hand grenade. You know, they seem, you know, overawed by the occasion, despite the fact that they were vastly superior to the USA. They seemed uncomfortable on the ball. And I think there are players in that team, the likes of Barkley and Sterling and Lallana, who are comfortable on the ball, who are fearless, who can really
quantities on the international stage, but certainly could give other teams a run for their money.
Yeah, but the kind of players who are allowed to roam free for their club teams, and if they can replicate that form on this stage, easier said than done, I know.
Don't forget that kid who's just come through at Southampton, Ricky Lambert.
Yes, at 32. But yeah, I mean, if they can kind of replicate that form, if you can say to Raheem Sterling, look, I want you to roam down the wing the way you do for Liverpool, then that might be a kind of a breath of fresh air for England, the likes of which they haven't had with Gerrard, Lampard, and the other fogies, really. I'd like to call them.
Hodgson is brave and throws in the kid. Who knows? It could be. I think England will struggle to get past the group. But if they do get past the group,
that's already an achievement.
I wouldn't rule them out in having a good tournament and being a surprise team, making it all the way to the semi-finals. But the big question mark is whether they get past the group stage or not, because the likes of Uruguay, they've got strength in depth all through the team. They're in South America, they know the conditions.
Arguably one of the most informed strikers in the world.
Well, he's injured, he's getting back. Don't rule out Cavani. They've got a very strong midfield too. Historically, Uruguay are the equivalent of Italy. They're very, very tough tackling, no hold down defenders, so it's quite difficult to get past them. They'll hack you down. And the Italians...
This Italian team seems to almost defy the historical stereotype of Italy. They're more of a passing, attacking team under this manager than they have been in the past, where you always see them as holding back and defending and hitting on the counter.
They've got a great bunch of kids coming through. They've got this kid Verratti at Paris Saint-Germain, who Real Madrid wants and most of the Italian teams want, but obviously being at Paris Saint-Germain now, it's quite difficult to get them out. And Prandelli has made them play the opposite of what we've been accustomed to.
Yeah. They got Buffon as well, who's playing. Buffon is playing in his 5th World Cup.
Is he beating a record of Sof, or? I have to check that. No?
This is his 5th World Cup. Yeah.
Sof played the World Cup. He must have been what, 42, 43 when he played the final in Spain. But he's still a top keeper.
The one thing with the Italians is their back four, or their defenders, Buffon, Chiellini, all play together for Juventus, so they have that knowledge and experience of playing together. Whereas you look at someone like England, you've got Jagielka and Cahill, who, apart from playing for England together, they don't have that relationship, so that could stand them in good stead. The one thing that would worry me is if Pirlo doesn't fire.
And Prandelli
has blatantly said that the whole Italian setup is geared towards Pirlo orchestrating everything. If he doesn't fire...
He's what, 35 now?
35, yeah.
Yep. Who will? Where does it come from for Italy? But Italy, they always start slowly, but they find a way to get out the group stages, and then they kick on in the later rounds. So I would see Italy and probably England getting through there.
It'll be crucial to see what kind of an attitude the teams take, Italy and England playing each other on Saturday, whether... And I think both teams know that they can't afford to lose that game. And I'm expecting a very cagey football match and maybe a dour 0-0 or a 1-1.
Yes,
I don't think any team can afford to lose. It'll be interesting to see how England try to contain Pirlo. Do you go for a man-to-man marking system? And if so, who do you deploy? If you do, I think you deploy Welbeck, in my opinion. Or do you perhaps zonal mark and commit a Gerrard or commit a Wilshere, whoever they decide to pick on the night, to contain Pirlo? That for me is going to be a crucial facet of the Italian and England campaign in this World Cup.
For me, I mean, I'd actually disagree with Stephen's assessment of the group. For me, Uruguay are the standout team in the group, and I think they'll get through. And then the second place, I discard Costa Rica. I don't think they have the quality.
We haven't even spoken about them, but they are one of the minnows in the World Cup.
But for me, it's Uruguay and then one of the two European
Incidentally, Costa Rica are the team that I picked on the sweepstake. It was a random draw. There you go, it's 5 pounds on the drain.
Even though it pains me to say it as a Man United fan, I think the key for England is whether the likes of Raheem Sterling, Sturridge, Gerrard, obviously, Henderson can take their Liverpool form into the national team. If they do, then they could well pass through into the next round, and who knows what can happen after that. If they don't take that form through, then it's Italy for me. But that for me is the key, actually. If those players who have had a phenomenal season with their club can transfer that form into the national team, then they have a very good chance, in my view.
Okay, that's
the advantage and disadvantage England have is that they play the two big guns in the first two games. So they've got the last game is against Costa Rica.
They may well be out by then.
Exactly. But it can work in the favour, can work against. It depends. I agree with what Paul said before, that Saturday's game, none of the teams can afford to lose, and they probably were facing the prospect of a very dull 0-0 draw, and then it's make or break for England against Uruguay. I mean, going back to World Cups, I still remember Italy in '82. They went through 3 dull 0-0 draws in the first group stage. And then when they got to the second round, they started playing teams off the park.
It's typical Italy.
And went on to win brilliantly the tournament.
I think England will win that game against Uruguay. And I think if they deploy the likes of Sterling and Sturridge and Barkley, I mean, you look at the Uruguayan defence, you know.
From Godin.
You look at, well, Godin's had a great season in Spain, but the likes of Lugano, he really is an ageing cart horse about to retire. I mean, there's no other word for him. Him against the likes of Sturridge, it's like a lamb to the slaughter for me. So,
And if they play Coates, Sterling, and will be definitely used to skinning him in training every day.
Yeah, if Suarez is out of that game, I back England to beat Uruguay.
right.
No,
Let's
like I
just
said
try
earlier,
and
Uruguay depends how Suarez recovers from the knee surgery he's had. If he's in top form, I fear for England, and the lamb that will be slaughtered will be England.
It could be
left,
whoever
right,
they
and centre.
play if Suarez is in top form, to be perfectly fair. If Suarez has a good game against anyone, he'll do it to anyone.
Oh yeah, but bear in mind he's had
especially people with sticking out ears.
he's had a serious, well, not serious, otherwise he wouldn't be at the World Cup, but he's had knee surgery, so we don't know. I think also the typical South American, they'll be quite crafty and filtering information.
We're going to go to a commercial break in just a couple of minutes. Let's try and squeeze in one more group before we do. Group E, surprisingly, Switzerland is the seeded team here, and the likes of France, who got through on the play.
Well, Switzerland won their group, didn't they?
Yeah.
And they are world ranked number 6 at the moment. How they've managed that, if you go through their list of players, is probably on those people. But fair play to them. I mean, like you say, the French have pressed the self-destruct button for God knows how many years now, going back to when it all kicked off with Anelka and Dominic in South Africa. But to be fair, it does look like an easy group where you might see both Switzerland and France on current form maybe getting out of there. Depends on what Ecuador and what Honduras turns up.
Honduras, perhaps arguably one of the weakest teams in the tournament.
Well, both have played England recently and were very uninspiring in both of the games. So
Yeah, with the
on
exception
paper,
of
France are the best, but the next three, you could say Switzerland have their number 6 ranking, but it could be a lottery there, and anyone could literally come out of that group.
Honduras, with the exception of Valencia and Wilson Palacios.
Valencia plays
Valencia.
Sorry, the one who got sent off at the weekend.
Left back from Hull City.
That might be the one, yeah. But with the exception
Figueroa.
of, and you'd say
Figueroa.
the likes of Wilson Palacios, who was okay early in his career, but
And he doesn't even get into Stoke City's team at the moment,
is,
so that says it all about
one
him.
of their standout players. I would discount Honduras, but
I mean, I disagree with Stephen. I mean, Switzerland, teams who are up there in the ranking, they do so on merit. I mean, you don't get through a group, winning your group in a European competition nowadays just by being a fluke. They've got lots of players who...
They beat Spain at the last World Cup.
Yeah, in the opening game. So they're
admittedly, Spain hit the woodwork like 20 times.
Yeah, but that's a game of football, no? And not always the objective is getting the ball in the net. Otherwise, you might pass it 50,000 times around without anybody touching it, and it's whoever gets the ball in the net. I mean, the Swiss, they're quite strong. They've got players in the German league.
Tenacious.
No, and they've got some very skillful players who have their career out in Germany. They're going to be a nation to bear in mind. The French, there I agree with Stephen. You don't know what's going to happen with them. They have potentially one of the stars in the tournament, in Pogba from Juventus. But we never know what's going to happen.
And Ribéry,
It's already kicked off a bit with the French when we've already had the scandal with Nasri being left out and his girlfriend tweeting colourful words to Deschamps for leaving him out. If they can leave a player like Nasri out for footballing reasons alone, they must be good. Whether it's footballing reasons that Nasri has been left out is totally debatable.
Deschamps, in fairness, has come out publicly saying that, in his opinion, France are no longer one of the elite teams. So that is a way of deflecting pressure and attention away from the team. I don't know, but I think...
To lower the expectations.
If they follow that mantra, then they may well be able to go out and play with a degree of freedom and liberty. They'll be without, Ribéry, which is going to be an incredible loss for them. But looking at that group, I mean, Ecuador... I think they qualify for the World Cup based on a sensational home record where they have a big advantage over any away teams at altitude up in Quito, no? They've only dropped 2 points in their entire qualifying campaign. So at this level, I would discount Ecuador completely. I think they have a massive advantage in qualifying, but once they get there, that's where it ends. For me, I think that might be the easiest group to predict the qualifiers, France and Switzerland.
OK. Well, we're going to take a short commercial break. We'll be back in just a few minutes with the remaining groups, and we're also going to be talking about who the stars of the tournament are going to be.